I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to The Sal Greco Show. We're finally back in South Florida, sunny South Florida. The last month has been quite a roller coaster. As you well know, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, followed by Tampa, Florida, where I was helping out in the relief efforts after Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And again, for anyone out there, these areas are still trying to get back on their feet. So if you feel inclined, find a good organization or charity. If you want to help out, send them, items. You want to give them any donations. Maybe take a trip yourself the way my friend Mighty Fuzz did. Please do so. Find a charity organization of your choice. I really don't know, and give an endorsement to. I could just say, do your own research because those people still need your prayers and your support. But it's slowly getting back to normal out there. I did, on my way back, I finally hit Hulk Hogan's Beach Shop in Orlando. It's a great place. Any fan of Hulk Hogan, I mean, I'm the biggest Hulkamaniac, maybe one of the biggest. I've been following that man's career for quite a while. I was there. I highly recommend going there. It's almost like a throwback in time because there's memorabilia there, there's shirts, there's cups, there's all kinds of things you could get. But it was just a good experience to be there while I was passing through Orlando. And with that being said, President Trump had a rally in New York City, basically took over MSG, which is now known as the MAGA Square Garden, apparently. But anyway, there was a big rally. There was a lot of things that occurred over the weekend and in the last week. So I decided to bring on a guest. You all know him. He's a good friend of mine. He has his own show. He's the co-host and founder of the Finest Unfiltered Podcast and a retired NYPD lieutenant, John Macari. So let's bring John on and let's get right into it. All right. So as promised here on the Sal Greco Show, here's my dear friend and co-host of the Finest Unfiltered Podcast and former NYPD lieutenant who has been picked on by the likes of Jimmy Rodriguez and the corrupt NYPD establishment, John Macari. Welcome back to the Sal Greco Show, John.
Thanks for having me. Glad the show's doing great, brother. I've been following it. It's doing well. Congratulations to you, and thank you for continuing in the fight, and speaking out and showing the public exactly what's going on, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about what's going on, and you're not, so I applaud you for that.
Thank you, John. Well, I kudos also to you and Eric, who I religiously watch every morning. I was watching this morning. I was watching last week. I have even now, as if everybody who has been following the Sal Greco Show knows, the last few weeks I was on the road. I was in North Carolina. I was in Asheville. I was in Tampa. And you now have new subscribers and followers because some of the people I was around saw me watching your show and said, "What's that about?" So you have new fans. They're also former cops or current law enforcement and other people that were there and said, "Wow, I can't believe what I'm hearing about the New York City Police Department and all this garbage that you guys are dealing with." And then they were watching my own show and they were like, what is all that about? And they correlate all of us pretty much together. So that's the main thing. But I see your show is growing. Despite all the attacks you still are receiving, kind of like myself. And I'm just happy to see that we're on the right together, if you know what I mean, John. It's an honor and a privilege.
Same. I agree. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in New York. And unfortunately, the corporate media at this point has been taken and they're not reporting exactly what's going on. So it's independent platforms like ours that are really getting the message out. And it's really growing because of the people, right? We wouldn't be able to have a successful show. You wouldn't be able to have a successful show if it wasn't all the people that support us in the background. And so, I think they deserve a shout out even more than we do, So it's crazy time, bro. It's crazy time.
That's right. And it's funny you mentioned that because also, John, we also have support from obviously people on the right who we lean towards that way, but also people on what you would call the left, because we're calling balls and strikes. And we just want a place that's not corrupted, that money's not involved, where people just do what's in their best interest and not the interest of the people that elected them to office, and make it a fair game. That's all people want. Whether you're on the right or left, that's what people should want. And with that being said, we're going to transition to the first thing I want to mention is obviously over the weekend, it was probably the biggest rally ever at Madison Square Garden. That's the heart of Midtown Manhattan. That is definitely not a Republican stronghold by any stretch of imagination. And there was about 20,000 people there. As you know, me and John, we have it. It's a special place for us because I'm sure, as you know, we graduated there from the New York City Police Department, Police Academy. So that was the one time I was there by myself. I was, roaming around the halls of MSG. And this rally was, I know how people are saying it's a Nazi rally. I heard a lot of crazy, conjecture. And, it's just a lot of people, they don't personally like Donald Trump. They say crazy things. They take shots at people that attended it, the Trump supporters. So I don't like getting involved in that. That's rolling around in the mud, so to speak. But the rally itself, ruckus crowd, great turnout. There was even more people out there. We'll get later to where we got the part with John Chell, the chief of department. He was talking about there were no incidents outside. I mean, this guy just lives in his own world. But there was at least, I'd say, a good 50, 60,000 people probably in the vicinity of Madison Square Garden. It was a great crowd, but there was a couple of things that happened. One, there was a comedian that I actually heard on your podcast, you and Eric mentioned that you follow this comedian. He made a couple of distasteful jokes. It landed nowhere. It was just a bad time. So what are your thoughts on first the rally and then, of course, this comedian that people are really hammering on it? I just think it's just a bad joke,
Oh, first of all, the rally, I think, was the greatest political rally in New York City history. I mean, in the world's most famous arena. So I think that was really saying something. And you're right. It's definitely not a Republican stronghold. But New Yorkers, pretty common sense people for the most part. I know when it gets to the polls, it doesn't appear that way because there's a lot of voter apathy in New York and low voter turnout, as well as a lot of low information voters. So we don't really ever get the turnout at the polls until people are mad. And what you see is people are mad, right? There was some counter protests around Madison Square Garden, even in the vicinity of Madison Square Garden, but it was very few and far between. I mean, the overwhelming majority was there to support Donald Trump. The man has policy, and I think anybody that listened to the entirety of the rally, you see he is the clear choice. He has solutions. He wants to bring down inflation. He wants to save middle class Americans on taxes when it relates to overtime, when it relates to our elderly, right? He wants to take away the tax, stop them from being taxed on their Social Security payments. So, I mean, the rally was phenomenal. I thought all in all, it was great. I think there was a hiccup, though, where they had Tony Hinchcliffe in. Tony Hinchcliffe, I'm a fan of. I'm not going to lie. I listened to him as the #1 show on YouTube. It's the #1 comedy show in the world right now, Kill Tony. It's a very raw comedic show. If any of you haven't listened to Kill Tony, I suggest you do. It's a really funny. He's known as a roaster, as like an old school roaster. He recently just did the Tom Brady roast. He was very raw. He brings in a lot of racial, ethnic jokes for everybody, not just for Hispanics or blacks. It's everybody and everything. He's a comedian, but I think I just think it was, I honestly think it was in poor taste. Not his jokes, but just him even being there. And I think he realized it right away. He made a joke that really wasn't funny. I didn't think it was funny. I thought he bombed. He went and he said that, like, basically Puerto Rico is an island of trash floating in the water, and he got booed, and he deserved it. And I think he knew right away. He's like, oh man, this isn't the crowd I'm used to. I'm used to being in a nightclub where people are drinking and expecting jokes like this, raw comedic jokes. And he kind of struggled to get through that whole performance. So, but I think, obviously Kamala Harris has zero policy. She has zero plan on how to stop inflation, zero plan on how to get this country out of forever wars, zero policy on how to stop the wars that are going on around the world and keep us out of World War III. So they need to find something to hang their hat on. So they go after Tony Hinchcliffe, and who had a bad performance. Like it was a bad performance. That's what it was.
Yeah, I say one thing about this rally. I thought the lineup was some people should have been more towards the end. I think if you have a comedian, you don't start with the comedian. That's usually more towards the end. And also, if you were going to bring on a comedian, why wasn't Jason Scoop up there? I mean, there's a guy that knows how to read the room and bring jokes that are political and make people laugh and bring it into the forelight, because, I mean, those jokes were just bombing. I know a lot of people are upset. And what I'm trying to get at here is there's a post I found, because it looks like now we have a certain, I believe she's Puerto Rican, a certain superstar, J-Lo, or we like to call her Jenny from the block. Here's my tweet from today from X, and I put it right here. So Jenny from the block endorsed Kamala Harris. What a shocker. Well, they now ask J-Lo what she may know about P. Diddy, Sean Combs, her former boyfriend's freak-off parties, and or anything else the public and or the FBI should know about. And here she is, and there's her X, her post from today, where she's basically endorsing Kamala Harris, which she did not endorse anybody up until this point. And here's Kamala Harris talking about how she's all of a sudden fighting for Puerto Rico. No one in Puerto Rico has ever seen her. First when she was in the Senate, now as a vice president, and now running for office. Nobody knows who she is. So what is your take on that right now? But the whole Kamala Harris now endorsing, getting endorsed by J-Lo out of nowhere.
I mean, why'd she wait this long to endorse her? Like, why didn't she? The minute that Kamala Harris was appointed to be the presidential candidate, because she sure wasn't elected to be the presidential candidate. The minute that she was appointed, why didn't J-Lo come out and endorse her right then and there? And that wasn't even an endorsement, really. It was a tweet with a flag of Puerto Rico, a ballot box, a check, and a vote. Like, to me, I'm like, it's very suspicious, all the people that are coming out now and all of their ties to Diddy. It's not just her.
No, I know.
Out the other day, Leonardo DiCaprio comes out the other day, and instantly, as soon as he comes out and endorses Kamala Harris, the first picture that pops in my head is Leonardo DiCaprio laying there with Diddy and three other guys, and it appears that he's aroused. And it appears, if you look at his pants, that he's aroused, and he's sitting there, laying there at a white party, and he's saying how he loves Diddy freak-offs and all this other. He didn't say freak-offs, but he loves a Diddy party. And, I'm like, what? It looks like people are nervous. To me, it looks like you're nervous. It looks like you don't want Trump because you're worried about law and order being restored in the country. That's what it looks like.
I personally find it quite intriguing how all these P. Diddy aligned or former friends of his or people that just attended his parties and had great glowing things to say about him have now come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. In fact, Beyonce and Jay-Z, who are rumored to be being investigated right now by the Eastern District of New York in regards to all this corruption and criminality that's been going on in the world of Eric Adams and also with P. Diddy. They're all endorsing Kamala Harris. I see one common denominator here. And just on a side note, coming from J-Lo, Jenny from the block, that block that she's from was actually where Jimmy's Bronx Cafe was. So I wonder what she knows about the aforementioned self-admitted criminal mob associate, Jimmy Rodriguez, who just about knows everyone that you really don't want to be in line with somehow aligns with him in his world. Whether it's Fat Joe, Peter Guns, the Clintons, you had, what's his name? Jose Serrano. You had Fidel Castro. I mean, everywhere you look, they're all associating with Jimmy Rodriguez. And J-Lo's yet another person. So you got to go back and wonder, what is P. Diddy, or did P. Diddy show up to Jimmy's Bronx Cafe? I mean, you go back all this time. Why is it that all these people are, it's like you draw a line, right? And it all goes back to that place. How is this, John? Why is it like almost like a puzzle that always leads back to the same thing? Con Sofrito, Jimmy's. It's Jimmy's like in the middle of this thing. He's like, I feel that he's like boxed in, like he's surrounding himself, the police department, J-Lo, P. Diddy, all these guys. He's just surrounded by them. He's insulated, yet we never hear his name pop up in anything, yet he's right there.
Listen, New York is under one party control, and it appears that by all means, there are people like Jimmy who have been influence peddling with politicians, with state and city agencies, and then they get their friends implanted in those state and city agencies as well as in the elected officials. New York under one-party control is running as a criminal enterprise right now. And what are you going to have to run a criminal enterprise? You're going to have criminals in the back end helping you to run it, right? Helping you, or you helping them and them helping you. One hand feeds the other. And that's what's going on here. I mean, the influence peddling, extortion, racketeering scheme that's being alleged involving Ed Caban's brother is not something that's new. Everyone's like, oh, it just came out. It was just happening. No, this has been going on for years and years and years. And by the way, it wasn't just them. It's happening all over the city. It's happening all over the city, and it's not just involving the NYPD. It's involving other local and state agencies. How could it be that one person has so many contacts in the New York City Police Department, in the State Liquor Authority, in the Department of Buildings, in the Department of Health? How could it be? The only way it could be is if they're elected officials tied to this person, if he's helping them to get campaign donations. Because like Eric Adams said, if you want to win, you just got to raise more money than everybody. And if he could help them raise money, that's why he's involved.
And also, we don't forget the aforementioned Anthony Miranda, New York City sheriff, who was seen at Con Sofrito when the place should have never had this party for a Puerto Rican Day Parade. And there he is, smiling with Jimmy. Like, there's nothing to be worried about. Anthony Miranda is on the scene with Jimmy. Hashtag I know Jimmy. We're going to get into this guy and everything that's going on at a later date, but I find it funny that, this guy seems to be like in a tic-tac-toe box. He be in the middle like the Brady Bunch, how that show started and everybody is connected back to the middle and it's him. I find it fascinating and how nobody's brought this guy up yet. Everybody talks about it, but they never just say point blank, yeah, there's got to be something wrong here. But now you did mention Eric Adams. So, obviously, there's a mixed bag here of reactions, and it's obviously the rally yesterday Donald Trump had. He, once again, I believe for the third time, is throwing a lifeline towards Eric Adams. And it was referenced he was talking and he thanked him. So, I'm going to show this for everybody because this is important because obviously me and John have been in the forefront of this whole thing with Eric Adams and how, this guy is far from a Republican or a Trump supporter. He's a charlatan. This guy's been indicted. We're hearing there's going to be other stuff coming down the pike shortly. But here's Donald Trump. And let's play this. So let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about Eric Adams, who's in the New York Post today or, Monday.
And I want to thank Mayor Adams, because Mayor Adams has been treated pretty badly. When he said that this whole thing with the migrants coming into New York, this is just not sustainable. We can't do it. We're trying to run a city. We got 100,000 migrants coming. We can't do it. It just can't do it. It's not feasible. It's not good. He said it very nicely. I said, well, he's going to be indicted by these lunatics for saying that. A year later, he got indicted. I think they upgraded his seat in an airplane. That's a very serious charge. They've upgraded my seat a lot, too. I used to fly commercial. I don't fly it so much anymore. But they'd see me back there and, sure, would you like an upgrade? I don't know. Maybe it's something else. But I have to tell you, he's been really great. And he said that they shouldn't be calling Trump a dictator because it's not true. That's nice. That was nice. Very nice. So we want to thank Mayor Adams. He's going through a hard time with these people. These are lunatics, by the way.
So what do you think about that, John? What do you think about what you just heard?
Obviously, me and you are probably the two biggest outspoken advocates against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I believe Eric Adams to be a corrupt individual. I don't believe it's anybody that Donald Trump should align himself with. And at first, I'm not going to lie, the like little flirting back and forth between Eric Adams and Donald Trump was beginning to annoy me. And But now when I look at it from a distance and I look at that rally, I see it more of a play. I see it more of a political move. Donald Trump is a social genius as far as holding these rallies. I've never seen anyone as good as him do this. He knows how to control the crowd. He reads the crowds very well. And you see when he starts talking about Eric Adams in New York City, goes silent. He's not getting claps. He actually gets a couple of boos, but he continues to go through with it. Right. And I'm like, that was more of a political play to me. It was more of a shot at Eric Adams, I think, because the more Donald Trump talks about Eric Adams, the more headlines will come out about Donald Trump talking about Eric Adams. And the more Eric Adams will be ousted from the Democratic Party. And Eric Adams was not friendly to the Trump administration. You know, he was told he let everyone know that he had the jails ready to receive Donald Trump. He wouldn't let the police officers at the funeral of Jonathan Diller stand behind Donald Trump when he gave a message. I think all in all, at first I was mad about it, and now I'm like, I hope Donald Trump talks about Eric Adams every day. And, you know, the truth's still going to come out. The man's under investigation, and it was a lot more than an airline ticket. I applaud Adams for actually saying one thing right for one time in his life. Yeah, don't call people fascists. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to call Donald Trump or Trump supporters fascists. I don't think that's anything revolutionary. I mean, and that's probably one of the highlights of his administration for 3 years. He said something that was on point one time.
Yeah, I understand. I hear you outright. I just want a few things clarified. Number one, it's definitely not airline tickets. Eric Adams took $10 million in taxpayer funds via Turkish straw donors. It's actually foreign money. That's a lot worse than taking like upgrades in your seats. Also, Donald Trump hasn't used a commercial airline in decades, probably. He owns his own airplanes. I don't know what that was all about. But the key thing here when he was speaking was the reaction of the crowd. There was silence and booing, meaning New York does not like Eric Adams. His approval ratings at 26%. It's probably even worse than that today. That little survey they took was a couple of weeks ago. He's probably dropped even more. And there's more impending, indictments looming over his head. As, there's the whole, the whole China investigation with Winnie Greco. There's also the whole, you're right, the extortion racket and then Consa Frito in the background. That's all looming over Eric Adams' head. So I think I don't know who's advising Trump. I don't know if he's having dinner with Eric Adams. I don't know what's going on here. The lifeline continuing, though, someone needs to tell him, cut it out. And if you are going to give anyone a shout out, not to try to be selfish, but hey, John Macari or Sal Greco, Eric Dim might get a shout out for being victimized under Eric Adams, who's definitely not a Trump supporter. And just to be clear, Eric Adams campaigned saying that New York City will remain a sanctuary city. Eric Adams, as the mayor of New York City, prior to all this indictment and all the investigations being announced, he said that the policy of New York City would be that the borders are to remain open and that he can easily, with a stroke of a pen, with an executive order, say, I rescind the other order that de Blasio had, and my police department can now cooperate with ICE. It's that simple. He's also done some other boneheaded things, like when he challenged the ruling of the shelters, the migrant shelters, and how New York City's supposed to just shelter come one, come all. That ruling from all those decades ago only stated that is supposed to be for documented citizens of this country. Eric Adams had challenged it. The ACLU immediately came up with some kind of counter, and he folded like a cheap suit. Well, I don't know if a cheap suit, maybe one of those, soon-to-be orange jumpsuits he'll be wearing. He folded that quickly, and that was it. So Eric Adams is no MAGA Republican, no matter what rhino behind the scenes and, traitor to the cause is trying to run interference saying Eric Adams is a great guy. Eric Adams is a charlatan. He will do and say whatever it takes to get out of jail or stay out of prison or, stay in power. That's the way he's always been. Us guys that were in the NYPD at one time, we all knew this. Now the rest of the world is seeing this. I don't know if maybe someone needs to send this show to Donald Trump, President Trump, to understand this. My advice, stay far away from Eric Adams. Don't throw him any more lifelines. This is actually hurting you. New York City does not like Eric Adams, and only corruptible people would agree with saying Eric is a good guy. Eric is a highly conflicted individual who surrounds himself with corruptible people. This is not a guy you want around at any point in your political career, trust me, because his career is actually over. You agree with that at all, John, in my assessment?
I agree with it totally. I mean, when I see Eric Adams, I see Kamala Harris. I see sheer gross incompetence. I don't see any policies. I don't see one good thing that Eric Adams has done for New York City. The only thing that people that support Eric Adams could go to is that he pays them significantly a large amounts of money that they shouldn't be paid. Or he said something once or twice that was right. I'm like, I say things that are right a lot. So do you. Those aren't accomplishments. Saying things aren't nothing. When you're a mayor, you have to implement policy. He's implemented no policy. Any policy that he has implemented, has had a negative effect on New York City. He hasn't implemented anything that's been positive. And all of his stances and all of his positions led to exactly where New York City is right now. You have an emasculated police department. You have a city that takes on and incentivizes the entire world to come to. We give away billions of dollars a year. We don't even know where it's going. And most of the money that we're giving away to are going to family and friends and donors of the Eric Adams team. So, I mean, yeah, I there's nothing that I disagree with there. I think and again, like there was a lot of people beat up de Blasio a lot, and I'm no fan of Bill de Blasio. I think he was the worst mayor. I didn't think it could get worse than Bill de Blasio until we had Eric Adams. And now I'm like, I'm under it's my contention that Eric Adams is the worst mayor in New York City history. He's the first indicted mayor in New York City history. And more than likely, he will go down as the most corrupt mayor in New York City history.
Probably in the mold of Jimmy Walker. Or Jimmy Walker left the country when he was about to get indicted and came back 10 years later. But he's in that exact same mold. Or Kwame Kilpatrick, the original nightlife mayor from Detroit, who, by the way, it was President Trump that commuted his sentence. So I don't know if that's an angle here. First, Eric Adams was trying to jump on the Kamala Harris bandwagon, and now he seems to have shifted because he sees the momentum is in the other way. So, hey, maybe if I become a Republican or I start buttering up to President Trump, I might get pardoned. Then my problems end and I can stay as the mayor. I think that's what you're looking at with him. But actually, when we're looking at him, our good friend here, Sam Mantor, had released his chart. So I want to go over this while we have it. This is the weekly crime statistics of New York City. Since Eric Adams says the city is not surviving, it's thriving. And here's the latest there. Breaking current year-to-date statistics on violent crime in New York City, week 42, 2024. Year-to-date violent crime is higher than full year 2019, the year before COVID, discovery reform, and bail reform. And here, look at this. Violent major felonies, 2024, 2023, up 3.9%. Violent major felonies, 2024 versus 2021, up 27.1%. Eric Adams' tenure as mayor, Jumaane Williams' tenure as public advocate, and Brad Lander's tenure as comptroller. That's all true. Violent major felonies, 2024 versus 2019, up 31.4%. The year before the pandemic, bail reform and discovery reform. If current trends persist, violent major felonies are projected to surpass the annual totals of the past 32 years, dating back to 2002. New York City is less safe from violent crime after bail reform, discovery reform, and the election of Mayor Eric Adams, public advocate Jumaane Williams, and the comptroller Brad Lander. Williams and Brad Lander supported bail and discovery reform. And this chart here shows everything you need to know. And these numbers it's uncanny how our friend Sam Mantor from whitecollarfraud.com always has these numbers up every week, and it's disheartening to read. Is New York City surviving? Is it thriving? Or is it a total mess thanks to the policies of one Eric Adams and these bail reform laws and these DAs and state and city legislation that do nothing about it?
New York City is in the worst shape that it's been in over 20 years, and it's continuing on a decline. It's continuing. Crime is rising. The quality of life in New York City is lowering. And you see it right there. The only thing that this administration has been trying to do is run perception management, false report our accounts to try to get people like myself, you, Sam, Eric shut down so that people can't see what's happening. They don't understand. They'll just know what they're told. They're consistently being told crime is down, crime's at or near historic lows. All lies. They're all lies. And they'll never try to debunk it. They'll never come back and say that what we're saying is inaccurate because it's what we're saying. Those numbers are from the NYPD's official numbers, not Sam pulling them out of his head. He's taking it right from the NYPD data. But the way that they're spinning it and misrepresenting it, they try to sell it. We're doing a great job. Everything's fine. So they run this whole perception campaign that everything's fine. Eric Adams doing good. He supports the cops. Your cops are out there working. And the only thing I ever see is two talking heads all over TV making bumbling fools of themselves. Notably, the Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Kaz Daughtry, and the NYPD Chief of Patrol, John Chell. And they're sitting there, and everything you see from them is a photo op. It takes numerous amounts of resources. They go to deal with a situation. They grab all these resources, all this technology. They waste all of taxpayer money. They go and they quell a situation temporarily for a night, and it comes back the next day. This administration has no long-term solutions. Everything is a show. Everything is a photo op. Everything is a short-term, literally short-term game. That they will shut an operation, a criminal operation that's going down for one day, and the minute they back off, there's nothing in place to stop it from happening again. Their plans are consistently unsustainable. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on in New York City and who's leading who Eric Adams has put in charge of the New York City Police Department.
I actually saw a video the other day that believe Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Daughtry, who also could be a detective from the way he gets paid, apparently, by New York City and the NYPD. He had a video out that they're cleaning up Midtown and Canal Street, going after the illegal vendors who then get right back out and do the same thing all over again. He mentions that. So that's what? I don't know how much taxpayer dollars is being wasted there. And also, the district attorney in Manhattan, which is Alvin Bragg, who prosecutes that, does not prosecute that. That's the whole point. If you were in charge, John, what would you do to try to curtail the crime or get a hold of these politicians who all talk a big game, but they never really do any action other than they party all the time with Jimmy Rodriguez and company or whatever next watering hole the guy opens up next? What would you do if you were somebody of any kind of sway in New York City? Or what do you suggest that whether it's Eric Adams or the next mayor, hopefully Curtis Leawood, comes up with an idea to change all of this?
I mean, if you want to quell crime in an area, in a particular precinct, let's take Canal Street, right? We have the sale of fake goods, right? You don't need a deputy commissioner operations on scene there. You don't need hundreds of cops to deal with that. You know, we have units to deal with that. We had units to deal with that. And really who you need is the local precinct to deal with that every day, because it has to be day in and day out. The enforcement has to be, right? And I agree with John Chell and Kaz Daughtry when they say we make the arrests and they're not prosecuted. I get that. That's at a political level. That's completely out of their hands. But you don't need the big photo ops. You don't need the big show. You need the rank and file out there day in and day out to make those arrests. And then you need to use your pulpit not to do political lawfare against these politicians, but tell everybody exactly what's going on. We're there every day. I send my guys there every day. We effect 5 to 10 arrests a day on Canal Street, and 5 to 10 arrests a day are declined prosecution from the district attorney's office. And you do that every day, and you get your statement of what's actually happening, not your spin, the truth of what's happening. My guys are out there. We made the arrest, and the district attorney's not prosecuting the case. And you do that every day. Believe me, the New York media is going to be behind you. They're going to be reporting that, and something's going to change, because you know what? It's going to wake the voters up. It's going to anger the voters. It's going to anger the apathetic voters in New York, and they're going to come out to the polls, and they're going to get that district attorney out, or they're going to get those woke people out of city council. So we need real, genuine, true leadership. We need a day in and day out, not the theatrics. That's my note for, I'll send you the bill, Eric.
Yeah. You know something? I think, our friend Marlon Bethel coined that phrase right. Perception management. That's what this I don't know what it is with these guys, but that's what it's really all about. It's how people perceive them. They have nothing to combat, factually how they're going to do something or how they did it. I mean, we saw back with the Columbia University scandal, right? With all of that going on, they couldn't even tell you that there was an accidental shooting. They waited days to tell you that. They just want to hide things and make it look like they're all heroes. And it's funny how now the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information back then was Tariq Shepard, who you heard it here first with Eric Dim and me on the show a couple of shows ago, that he would be the next chief of staff. And here he is now. Now he's bumped up 3-star chief. He was just a captain not too long ago. He went from uniform to commissioner back to uniform. I've never seen anything like this. This is the kind of management that's going on in the NYPD. I got Eric's take on it back then and that day. I'd like to ask you what you think about Tariq Shepard being promoted. He went from captain to deputy commissioner of public information, and now he's the chief of staff out of nowhere to the most, as Eric Dim likes to say, insignificant police commissioner in the history of the New York City Police Department, Tom Donlan.
I spoke to Marlon Bethel offline about this, and I think he nailed it. He said, when you saw Tariq Shepard at these press conferences, he always looked angry. He always looked like he couldn't deal with the media. He couldn't handle the pressure. We seen him waving off questions. He was always angry. He was just not professional, right? He's cursed at reporters. He treated them like real bad. Like he just wasn't well suited to be the deputy commissioner of public information. But, and to me, I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I said, but you know what's really, really terrible about that is this guy's career was centered around being in the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information's office. There should be no one better suited in the New York City Police Department to be the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information other than a guy that was a cop, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a captain there. I mean, it's crazy to me that now you promote him, you make him the Deputy Commissioner, and he's horrible at it, which leads to show you why nepotism is no good, why you need to put people's strengths. You need to put people ahead for competence and where their strengths lie. And clearly, dealing with the media is not Tariq Shepard's strength, probably. And I would go as far to say as if he can't deal with the media, God only knows how he is dealing with the public.
I also want to note that Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, that office actually has about 80 on duty, like active duty status cops. No, they're not injured. They're not like a broken wing. They can go out in the street where we don't have enough cops right now because 80 of them are stashed away in this unit. And one of them recently did an attempted murder and left somebody a quadriplegic in New Jersey and then went home and went right back to work for Tariq Shepard the next day. That's the kind of behavior that's going on in this office underneath Tariq Shepard, who's clearly not a leader. And, I heard he had some choice words to say about myself and John Macari and Eric Dim. Hey, Tariq, you want to come on this show? You want to come on John's show? You want to, give us your take on how the NYPD is and the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, how that whole office is run? You could be my guest. But, what happened there with your own cop that, by the way, got in on the nepotism and cronyism with 2 years on, which is another story altogether, shows you are an inept leader. You are not born to lead. You were never a leader. And this chief of staff, I hope you don't end up like the last one who's involved in himself in a corruption scandal. That's Raul Pintos, Mr. Consofrito himself. So with that being said, we're talking here about the NYPD. We mentioned one guy in particular, John Chell, guy I used to work for. I know this guy. He's the chief of patrol. He even has his own social media campaign. He has bootlickers running his deputy. It's like his own DCPI, actually. So John Chell, over the weekend, John Chell was at the Trump rally. Now, he's supposed to be working, but apparently he decides to go on Newsmax. And a side note here, not because John's my friend, John used to go on Newsmax and on the same show, and then all of a sudden, that changed when John Chell and Kaz Dawdry showed up to start being interviewed all the time every morning, because what they have enlightens the public since they're so truthful with things. So I'm going to show this clip that actually came. This is from John's own X right here. So it says right here, its true form, the politically confused Chief of Patrol, John Chell, who has either turned a blind eye or participated in blatant corruption, states the NYPD's hands are not tied and NYC Mayor Eric Adams lets him play offense. So let me just make you hear this because I found this fascinating that this guy even talked on this guy's show. But here's the clip and I remind you, I just want this back on the record because me and John and Eric were flabbergasted by this. He's supposed to be working, right? He's the chief of patrol, but yet he has time to give an interview on Newsmax, and it's political, which, by the way, was something that they made my own termination about. Political.
Yeah. I want to bring in Chief of Patrol John Chell. John, you had said you were not coming down unless there was a problem, but you're here, so I'm hoping everything's okay.
I lied, but everything is great. We got 19,000 in the arena. We got 5,000 outside. Great atmosphere. Everyone's peaceful. We haven't had one incident. No protesters. Just a very energetic day, and it's our job, my job, to keep this city safe, to keep this venue safe, and I'm very proud of my cops today.
Well, hold on. They have not one protester out in Madison Square Garden. You haven't had one protester problem?
There might have been a few blocks away, but they never made it to Madison Square Garden, and that was the message we were sending. Not today.
Not today. You know, the NYPD has a really tough job. You guys are the greatest and the largest police force in America, but there are concerns now because of a lot of the policies, because of the revolving door of justice, the district attorneys that are just not prosecuting the people the way they need to, the judges that are letting people out when they should be, behind bars. Your hands are tied as cops, right? You can arrest all the people you can, but if they're just letting them out, what are you going to do about it?
Look, our hands are not tied. Our mayor lets me play offense, lets our cops play offense, and we're bringing crime down in the city. We're the safest city in America, and we're going to keep doing that.
Well, Congresswoman, what's crazy is Mayor Eric Adams, deep blue Democrat Mayor Eric Adams, came out and offered some pretty encouraging words. Was like, hey, what they're doing to Trump is real bad. I mean, can you imagine?
John, I got to say, before I kick this to you, the amount of bootlicking going on, it might be the new bootlicker news right there. It might be Newsmax. I don't know what John, take the mic from me. I don't know what to say after seeing that.
I mean, before I even say anything, I mean, the only statement that he said that was true, and this comes by way of Amazing Ant, a friend of the Finest Unfiltered Podcast. We had played the clip early this morning on our show, and she said the only thing that John Chell said that was true was, I lied. Because everything after that was a lie. Every single thing after that. He's like, we didn't have any, there's no protesters. I'm like, as he's saying that, somebody who is the unofficial deputy commissioner of public information for the NYPD is outside reporting on all the protesters. And I'm like, is this guy watching what's going on outside or what the media outlets are reporting? So there's protesters. I mean, overall, it was peaceful. There was only a few arrests, I think, but like there were protesters. And I think Carl Higbee, who I like, I think he believed them. And he was like, oh, wow, there's no protesters in New York City. He's like, oh, actually, you know what? There are some protesters, it's like, oh, yeah. And then when Lydia asks him about the DAs that aren't prosecuting, and everyone knows the DAs aren't prosecuting, and everyone knows that police department's hands are tied. Everyone knows the Civilian Complaint Review Board is hammering down on the rank and file officer. Everyone knows about the protest settlement agreement that has basically hampered the NYPD's response to protests. It's why they look so inept and ineffective when we never did in the past, and we have the tools and resources to basically quell any type of riot that breaks out, and we haven't been able to do that, and it's based upon policies that Eric Adams set into place, helped along, and signed off on, and people like John Chell stayed silent about. So when she brought that up, he said, no, that's not true. We're out there. We're bringing crime down. This is the safest big city in America. I mean, I even know people that are fans of him that sent me that. I know people that like, oh, you guys are wrong about Chell. They sent me that. They're like, this guy's got to stop, And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, I haven't heard the guy say an honest thing in months.
Yeah. Listen, you not only hit every nail on the head. I was just wondering. I watched the show, but I just wanted to hear you say this again because I when he sat there, he says, there's no protesters. I got so many videos and pictures. There's protest. Of course there's going to be protests. And no, it's not illegal to protest anything. But he said, oh, there's no protest. And they're like, wow, there's no protest. I'm like, come on, guy, wake up. Listen, it's not all about roses. It's not all rosy out there. The reality is there are going to be protesters. And Carl Higby's sitting there and I'm like, oh God. I mean, is he a rookie reporter or is he just like, there might be a new bootlicker news, might be Newsmax. I can't believe that nobody challenged this guy saying, where are you hearing about no protesters? Just one quick Google search on X or anywhere on social media will show you there are protesters there. I saw a sign that said it's something about Nazi rally or something. It was right there in front. What is he talking about? Oh, there's no protesters. There he goes, I lied. That's the only thing that he said is truthful, that he lied, because listen, I know this guy. John Chell is the ultimate gaslighter. He put his hand around you. If you're a young officer and say, listen, if you work with me, I'll make sure I'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. And the first thing that happens that either the media or the department questions that officer's actions on, and he turns around and says, well, whatever rank he would be, captain, inspector, whatever it is that John Chell was. Hey, remember you said, and you know what he's going to say? I didn't tell you that. What does your training tell you to do? That's what he is. He's a gaslighter. He's using people for himself. John, this guy is like out on the camera promoting himself there. He's in his glory at a Trump rally. Now, I thought that he wasn't political. Remember, he wasn't going to do it because he was browbeating anybody, whether it be a journalist, whether it be a city council. And granted, I don't agree with people like Lincoln Wrestler, but now I saw Lincoln Wrestler go online on X, and I want to get your thoughts on this too. And he said something about John Chell. Oh, this is a political. He's having a political speech, or he's sitting down talking about politics when he's in uniform. But Lincoln, what are you going to do about it? Because we don't want to hear about things. What is the action? There's no action here, John. A lot of rhetoric from city council. They want to curtail John Chell and Kaz Daughtry, but what has come about this, John? I haven't seen any action on anything. Even Lincoln Wrestler yesterday, who was on X screaming about it, he had 1 million views on it, but I didn't see anything today. I didn't see anything drafted from city council to try to drag John Chell. And what do you think that's all about, John?
City council's in there. I mean, the bottom line is this. There was a huge corruption scandal that has just broken out in the NYPD, and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD are either grossly incompetent and let it happen, or were directly involved in it. But either way, they have no business being in charge of the greatest department in New York City. And the same's true for Eric Adams, because it wasn't just the investigation. It wasn't just the airline. He has 4 other investigations on top of that, including the corruption around the NYPD and the influence peddling and extortion racketeering which all the way, by if anyone's paying attention, it looks like Eric Adams is fully aware of it, and he helped it along by the policies he's made, by getting rid of the March program, by bringing up this Office of the Nightlife, who was directly involved in the extortion process. I mean, so when we look at that, and then you look at Kathy Hochul's not removing Eric Adams, right? There's another way where a board could convene, and I think it's like the oldest sitting borough president and a few other appointed officials could get together and reconvene and remove Eric Adams. That's not happening. The other way, the third way, city council could remove him, and city council isn't removing him. So again, we're under one-party rule in New York City and in New York State, and it's got to end. There's got to be balance restored. The corruption is deep, and, it is what John Chell did wrong. Yeah, it's 100% wrong. I mean, we spoke about it today. Eric was talking about the Sergeant Dana Martillo, who was wearing a Trump patch, and they took 40 vacation days from her. Here we have the seated chief of patrol in full uniform at a political rally. When last summer, where was he? He was in Puerto Rico at Somos, at a political fundraising event for the Democratic Party. What the hell is the police department doing there? I mean, he's so politicized. He's been involved. It's completely wrong. And, Lincoln Wrestler and the rest of the city council should get off their ass and remove Eric Adams. And in doing so, will ultimately remove John Chell and the rest of the corrupted NYPD officials that are in the rank.
I agree with you. In fact, Lincoln Wrestler, if you are watching, we still believe you would make a great cast member of the show that's now no longer on air, but maybe they can make a grand reappearance, the Golden Girls. So with that, John, I got to show one final thing. It's actually from your ex here. And I find this very interesting because this picture here is your post. It says, more importantly, Representative Espelot should worry about the influence peddling going on in his district involving a consulting firm, bar, and restaurant owners, the NYPD, other state and city agencies, as well as elected officials. Now, I want to reiterate to the right, okay? This is Corrine Reyes to the right wearing the blue, and next to her is Ralph Salamanca, okay? Now, these two people, and there's more here, but these two in particular, were very involved at Con Sofrito with Jimmy Rodriguez and Richard Caban and throwing fundraisers, and they're like synonymous with that place. And it's funny how this comes out, and here he is, and it's that crew. In fact, I wonder if Jimmy is there himself somewhere, or probably behind the camera hiding. He doesn't want to be on camera, but this crew was synonymous with that place and the corruption there that went on and human trafficking that you heard and all these crazy allegations. John, what do you think about that? Not only that picture, but the people that are now coming out saying they're talking about all this kind of stuff. Oh, we don't like what the comedian said. But yet, look at them. They were having fundraisers and doing God knows what at a place that had human trafficking allegations, narcotic allegations. Now there's allegations of people that got promoted. They would go there with a booster bag and hand it to someone at Con Sofrito. Here they are, and they're smiling, thinking everything's okay. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you look at Rep. Espelot's career and you look at the times that he has intervened in NYPD operations, has met with NYPD precinct commanders, notably in the 2-3 precinct where Fernando Mateo's Zona de Cuba was. And when there were shootings and stabbings at restaurants and bars around there, and the police department would take the appropriate action, go there with other agencies, Rep. Espelot would show up, try to see what he could do to stop the enforcement from happening. And, the NYPD would show him time and time again why the enforcement action taken. It wasn't because they didn't like the bar or the restaurant. It wasn't because they wanted to harm business owners. It was because there were serious problems going on in these establishments. But Rep. Espelot was there fighting for basically restaurants that were unable to manage themselves and were problems with public safety. And he's done it not only in the restaurant that you notably talk about a lot, Con Sofritos. He's done it throughout the city in other places. So like I said, this has been going on a long time in a lot of different places. And for you to be pointing out a comedian telling a bad joke when you sitting in your glass house that's about to come down, by the way, I think it's insane. I think it's absolutely insane. I think it's crazy to that they even have anything to say about anything. If I was them, I'd be cowering in the corner right now trying to cover my tracks.
I not only agree with you, this person, particular Espelot, I remember was one of the reasons why Ed Caban himself was getting promoted in the NYPD because they went hand in hand. He seems to be involved around the nightclub just like the Cabans were. And of course, he's a friend of Jimmy's. So again, we go back to how many, you just draw a map. If we draw the map, how many lines crisscross with Jimmy Rodriguez in all his gin joints? Because it's unbelievable. And yes, Fernando Mateo is also a friend of Jimmy's. So it's just nonstop with that. And it's funny that you mentioned that today because they're coming out and they need to be worried about themselves because this whole corruption scandal that people just look at it, it's dormant. It's not dormant. These agents, these attorneys are actively working. They don't care about who's going to be elected president. That is going to continue to roll. And trust me, the rumors are persistent that there's something coming down the pike and there's going to be a lot of names and people that people are going to go, wait a minute, where did I hear that before? And saying that, John, where can people see you, hear you, reach out to you, let people know where to go?
Yeah, I use my name for everything, John D. Macari. I'm on X or Instagram. And then, if you want to listen, check out the podcast. We're at the Finest Unfiltered on YouTube or Rumble. We're also up on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're anywhere you could find a podcast. And the full name of the podcast, New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered Podcast. Always a pleasure to be on here. I think it's great work that you're doing. It's important work that you're doing because not a lot of people are doing it. Nobody's really talking about it. The mainstream's not talking about it. I don't even think that Newsmax is the bootlicker news. I just don't think they know. They don't know unless they're listening to your show or they're listening to my show. They don't know. They have the chief of patrol in the NYPD. Oh, yeah, what he's telling us must be true. Yeah, it must be, except everything the guy says, like the mayor he works for, is a lie. So if it's not for people like you, we don't know about it.
I have the exact same sentiments to you, John. I remember when I first started my adventure, I kind of took the road following you because I liked what I saw with you, and I said, I think this is an avenue that people should follow. Former law enforcement or even attorneys that were in the system that now are exposing the system and showing you how this really works. Because I don't think the public, if they truly know what's going on, like I mentioned previously about Councilman Yusef Salam, who, by the way, somehow over the weekend, he was speaking in Detroit. We don't know how much he got for that. And then he's supposed to be speaking in Pittsburgh, October 29th. Did this get approved by the New York City Conflict of Interest Board? We'll wait to hear about that one. So we try to hit on the nerves and try to point people in the right direction. Elected officials need to be held accountable. The same could be said about law enforcement. Same could be said about firefighters. If they work for you, they have to answer to you, the taxpayer and the people of the city. You can't have it the other way around. I know Eric Adams would like to make you believe that, but that's not true. So with that being said, if you liked what you saw, please, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button on Rumble, hit the like button and follow me on Rumble, hit the Rumble button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the major podcasting platforms, also follow me there. And listen, we're going to continue to expose the corrupt individuals that not only in city or state or even federal office, but we're going to shine a light to try to get people to become not the low information voter, which is who they target, but to give you the information so that you can make the right decision. Because we got another week and a half before it's election day. Closing out, John. What are your thoughts on the presidential election, Kamala or Trump?
If it's a fair election, if it's an honest election, Trump wins in a landslide. I see 1980 all over again. I see the same sentiment in the country that when Reagan ran and that inflation was high and we looked weak and we weren't going in the right direction and people were angry and it really incentivized voters to get out there. I see it all over again. I see Donald Trump winning in a landslide as long as we have a free and fair election.
I tend to agree with you. Side note, I already voted, and I think everyone here knows who I voted for. So with that being said, I'm going to say adieu, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.